Welcome everyone back to another episode of BizzTalk. I'm Jason Schuster, your host and representative of BizzTech. With me today, I have Julius Solaris representing Swapcard. He's the head of engagement at Swapcard. They're doing some really, really cool things right now. And we are talking today about event platforms and kind of the future, where they're going, what's next. But getting started, Julius, can you just give us 2 or 3 minutes, a little bit about your background, about yourself, about Swapcard. Give the audience just kind of an idea of where your perspective comes from.
Totally. I come from being an editor of Event MB, one of the leading publications for the event industry for 14 years. And actually, a couple of months ago, I joined Swapcard. So my previous life, which a lot of people know me for in the event industry, is managing content. Just recently, I kind of made the switch and joined the Resistance, if you allow me some Star Wars references here.
Absolutely.
In terms
Well,
of
I've got
joining, yeah, there you go. So,
nerds
join
here.
the supplier side, specifically the event technology side. I've always been writing and covering and researching event technology and the use of technology in events since 2007. Therefore, I've always had this kind of interest in the game, and just joined Swapcard, which is one of the leading virtual and in-person event platforms. So we come from the live event industry. We have been, deeply engaged as an event app that you would use at large trade shows to network with other people. And as many other apps, in March 2020, we did a pivot to introducing more virtual components that have kind of become the most important ones over the past year. We grew 400% over the last year. We were at 40 people, with 140 now. So it's just a ridiculous type of growth. But we're also looking forward that the comeback at events, and specifically in-person events. There's a lot of challenges right now in the industry. So yeah, we like to think we're in a very privileged position, looking at the market, what's happening, empowering some of the most exciting events happening, like South by Southwest, and all corporate large trade shows happening around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. South by Southwest, that's actually in my neck of the woods. I live in the Austin area. So I'm actually really looking forward to South by Southwest kind of coming back and being a thing again, because that's a really cool event. That's really cool. So you guys have been doing virtual events for quite a while then. I mean, maybe more virtual in the last 2 years, but before that, were you still doing some 100% virtual events, or was it more live hybrids?
Yeah, I feel that the virtual piece we were delivering before the pandemic was really functional to the in-person experience. So there was
Okay.
a lot of stuff happening on the app. But as most platforms before the pandemic, you would have a live stream capability to embed the live stream within an app, but it was as far as that. Obviously, we've been announcing hundreds of features over the past year to enhance the virtual experience. So it's nowhere comparable. We're talking about two different words, pre and
Right.
post pandemic, or during pandemic, in terms of what virtual event platforms have been developing. And this is not just a matter of Swapcard. I think it's across the board. Nobody can safely say, oh, we were like we're today a year and a half ago. There's nowhere near the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, obviously, you said hundreds of features, but what would you say, what have been the biggest changes? Like what features would you say needed to be implemented that made the biggest difference in that switch to a more 100% virtual experience?
Totally. That's been different phases, I would say. So the first phase
Okay.
that us as Swapcard have been focusing on, but I feel the overall, all the technology, virtual event technology platforms have been focusing on has been enhancing the experience, the watching experience of the event. And I feel where Swapcard really was lucky, because we created our own luck in that sense, was the smooth UX that we had, which made the viewing experience extremely nice. Because especially at the beginning, of the pandemic, where everybody was locked down worldwide, you would end up watching these shows as they were shows, right? Not necessarily
Right.
events. We were just in the watching stage. We weren't as active yet. So there was a need of content to understand, the direction of many industries. Therefore, you would just watch that as you would watch a broadcast. So that experience, most of the features went into optimizing that experience, the feature releases, the product releases. So optimizing the integrations with other tools, optimizing the viewing experience, optimizing the engagement part within the viewing experience. That has been, to me, phase two, right? So showing the right tools side by side to the live stream to engage with what was being discussed, because we saw the switch immediately within the next 3-4 months in terms of having a need to get people to connect, because this overload of watching experiences then was becoming too much for a passive audience. So we needed to make the switch and get the audience to engage. So how do you do that? That's been the
Right.
focus, I would say, that is still lasting today. So the engagement part is probably still the nut to crack here in terms of making engagement happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the fact that you talked about kind of making your own luck somewhat at the beginning of 2020, there's been a few platforms that really exploded during the pandemic. It sounds like Swapcard made huge growth. You said 400% growth. We've seen some other platforms pop up that have done really well. Hopin is one that comes to mind that has grown like crazy. And no, I guess I would say what is missing in the market right now as far as maybe not features, but like benefits to the audience, right? What's still kind of missing? Like what's the challenge that is still needing to be solved? And then once we kind of talk about that a little bit, I really want to kind of move toward like what are some other possibilities? What are people not thinking of? So but right now, like what's the biggest challenge? What are we trying to solve with event platforms right now?
Totally. And finally enough, I would say that the challenges that we're facing right now in a virtual environment are very similar to the challenges we were facing in an in-person environment as well, right? You go to a
Okay.
large event, you want to meet people. How do you do that, right? How do you do
Right.
that? It's a nightmare, right? So if you go to South by Southwest, you have hundreds of thousands of people. Where do you even start? How do you process all that information? How do you know where to go and who to meet? So those are sort of inherent, intrinsic questions that the event industry has been asking itself for a while. And to be honest, before the pandemic, we didn't have quite a good solution yet to these challenges. Obviously, technology was trying to help, right? So mobile apps, event apps have been used traditionally to filter the noise a little bit, set up meetings, get to connect. And when we talk about events, I want to clarify that I talk specifically about business events. I don't talk about,
Right.
consumer trade shows and, conventions for fans and stuff like that. I'm talking about, business to business trade shows. I'm talking about conferences. I'm talking
Right.
about incentive travel. So just to focus it and narrow it down a little bit, the need for meeting, the need for closing business at these events, it's key. The contribution that these events make to the economy is directly correlated to the ability of people to close business when they meet face to face, right? So it's not just
Right.
about the content, it's just about closing business, making business happen. So the same challenge translates to the virtual environment, right? So how do you make that happen, right? It was just funny that by coincidence today, we just released a report, which is an analysis of 500 virtual events with more than 1,000 attendees on how do people close business? When do they close business? And I think this is probably the challenge of 2021, to prove that virtual events and then in-person hybrid events, so a mixture of virtual and in-person, how will they help to close business in this new environment we all live in, right? And a lot of the insight there is very interesting. For example, one of the things I can tell you is that the most business virtual events is closed before the event starts, not during the event. So it's interesting how you
Interesting.
start building tools around engagement and how you create ways for exhibitors and attendees to connect. And we've been developing a lot in that sense in terms of one-to-one calls, virtual booths where you can book meetings, but also, you know, group chat with demos available there to showcase, roundtables for sponsors to host sessions and have everybody together and provide value while, you know, positioning themselves as thought leaders in a specific industry or sector. And then, you know, tools like matchmaking, which we're very proud of. You know, we're one of the very few true, and it's very important to see true, artificial intelligence powered platform where, you know, we're not just talking about tagging attendees, but we're talking about the platform learning about your preferences, learning about what you do on the platform, and connecting you to the right people within the platform. That's where technology becomes useful, right?
Oh, big time. Matchmaking is a huge one. So you're talking about, and I want to talk more about this report, by the way. Because I was on social media, and I may or may not have seen that there's a report coming. So I don't know if we can get a sneak peek of some things here today or not. But, you know, when it comes to what you're saying is that part of this new challenge is getting platforms to engage the audience beforehand. So get attendees to start networking before the event even happens. And that's really one of the keys to making it worthwhile. And I think matchmaking is just such a big one. I feel like some platforms right now are really missing the mark on matchmaking. And like you said, an AI driven matchmaking that really like understands the preferences, or, you know, as obviously AI gets better over time. So it's hard to roll it out day one and have it be super effective, but over time, like just that's so important. Because yeah, at South by Southwest, how in the world am I going to find the people that I actually want to talk to? I mean, how? So
think about the potential of attending South by Southwest, right? And the platform learning all your preferences in terms of sessions you attended, you know, people you met with, attaching that information anonymously to your profile in the sense that it doesn't get used in any way on marketing levels. But then you go and attend another event on Swapcard, the platform already knows about a lot of your preferences and starts already to connect you to the right people and to the right sessions within a different event. So all of a sudden you're having a much better experience just because you attended another event on Swapcard. So, and this is like incredible benefit to new planners that join the platform, because in a sense, they will have an already enhanced experience because some profiles have attended so many events on Swapcard already.
I love that. I love that so much. So kind of moving on to kind of the next thing. What's the next step? Well, maybe before the next step, let's talk a little bit more about this report. What kind of new discoveries did this data reveal? I mean, like, what are like open platform for you? What shocked you the most about actually studying these platforms?
I was shocked by a lot of it. Honestly, I've been looking at data for a long while as an editor and founder of a blog on events talking about event technology. We've done a ton of research, and I always lamented when I was in my editor-in-chief capability that virtual event and event tech companies didn't release any data. So the first thing I did when I joined Swapcard was like, we need to focus on sharing this data with the world, because this is where you know, this is what people care about, right? So the first report that we did and we published today, it's called The Business of Virtual Events, and you can find it on swapcard.com. It's very easy to find. You know, a lot of learnings. So we looked at, as I said, at 500 events with more than 1,000 attendees, hundreds, let me tell you the exact number, 50,000 exhibitors, 1.6 million attendees. So there's a huge amount of data that we went through here. So some of the learnings. So I told you one, the best time to close business is actually before the event starts. So most of the data points at the fact that, you know, the actual most engaging time to actually have the attendees' attention is before the event, because during the event, most people are listening to what's being said. Then the other shocking data that we found on an event planner perspective is actually that 40% of exhibitors do not respond to lead requests on virtual event platforms. To me, it's like mind blowing. We like, when you talk about what's next and the biggest pain points, justifying the sponsorship on virtual is probably the biggest pain point event planners have right now, right? How do you sell a sponsorship to a virtual event platform? But you know, the carelessness of most of exhibitors is just shocking to me, on how then they're not able to justify to the business bag. If you miss out on 40% of, you know, 40% of exhibitors do not even respond to leads, is just like, to me, scary. So yeah, that's definitely another one that shocked me. Another one
that one's crazy. That one's a big one.
It is. It is.
I think some people might be in trouble with their bosses, right? Or at least their marketing department. So.
Yeah. And then I guess the biggest question is also what delivers best in terms of activations you can do during a virtual event. So what delivers worst, I can tell you, is like when exhibitors, like in sales representatives, are very active on the platform and start bombarding everybody. That's correlated with the least effectiveness in terms of sales capability. So, you know, spamming people out. I mean, yeah, I mean, discovery of hot water, as we say in where I come from, you know, nothing new there. We all knew that, fine, whatever. But, you know, still a lot of people think that messaging everybody, you know, without context works. It doesn't. If you need proof, you got proof that it doesn't. Then what works best? It's really sponsor sessions. That's why I was talking about roundtables and the likes.
Right.
So having sponsors to actually engage with content, that's the magic mix. But for those that have been working with trade shows and the likes, this is nothing new. The industry was already gravitating towards that. Nobody was selling space at trade shows anymore. It was really tough to sell big spaces. And actually the big space you would sell at a trade show was what, for someone to do some content on the booth. So this correlation, this kind of a intersection between content and sponsorship is probably key to deliver value on virtual events. These are just some, there's 10 of those. Invite you to check out on the rest of the report.
Really, really looking forward to that. I guess I have one question regarding sponsorships. I mean, obviously a sponsorship at a in-person event is pricey, right? I mean, especially let's say you want to sponsor GDC. I happen to know that a lot of those sponsorships run in the $1 million plus range. Was there any data that led to, like, what is the average size or spend of a sponsor on a virtual platform? I mean, are sponsors spending decent money, or is it like, or is it an opportunity for sponsors to get exposure for a really low price? This is really interesting to me, at least.
Well, you know, obviously every event is different, and we don't have access to the commercial side of the event. So for how much we will sell sponsorship, but we can tell you definitely that from some analysis that we've done and we've looked at in terms of data, is that the dynamics, the numbers of a virtual event and an in-person event are profoundly different. So you cannot, like, actually the biggest mistake that someone can make is to apply the same model of in-person events to virtual events. It's, you know, starting to sell the same sponsorship levels, the same type of opportunities is probably the biggest mistake we've seen from the beginning, because whenever you enter virtual events, you're entering the online marketing remit. So you got to think in terms of online marketing, in terms of reach. So you got all this huge reach. So an event that used to do 500 people in attendance does 5,000 all of a sudden. So you have this opportunity there. But the dynamics are completely and inherently different in terms of how you sell the event, in terms of tickets. For example, the most obvious ones, we've seen a decrease in the ticket price across the board. That's obviously a very counterintuitive one. You cannot charge the same amount of money, even for VIP experiences is not just simply not justified with the amount of content available online, right? And with the type
Right.
of experiences. And then with sponsorship as well, I think you have to be more creative and go really for scale, even in sponsorship. You cannot, like with in-person events, it was more about scarcity, right? And therefore selling a big sponsorship, a massive sponsorship, and then squeeze the rest in with tiny logos, right? Here it's probably almost the opposite, right? So it's selling more to volume and, you know, be more specific with the type of activations that you do, because all of a sudden you have a new set of tools, very like programmatic advertising, banners, you know, all the set of tools that you would expect in an online marketing environment to be all of a sudden available to you. So there's so much more that you can do, but you got to decrease the pricing for sure and appeal to more people.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess one thing that's nice for virtual event organizers is that it's a lot easier to organize a virtual event. So not only can they, you know, if they do this strategy right, smaller sponsorships, but more of them, you can also throw more events. So I think that's another consideration for organizers, at least, is, you know, hey, you know, be more specific about your event.
You're right, Jason. You're so spot on with this one. What we like to do as Swapcard is we like to take it a step forward. Because, you know, what happens, another issue that happens with all these instances of virtual events that you would do, whether it's like a full 3-day conference or 1 day or a 3-hour webinar or 1-hour webinar. So companies have been doing a lot of these, and you find yourself that you kind of have to reinvent the wheel every time, right? You have to start the talk every time, you have to join the platform every time, rebuild your profile. So what we're introducing in June is this new concept of communities, and where a planner will have his hub to a certain extent where everybody joins and they can announce multiple events and have their instances all the time. But the good thing is that attendees stay on the same platform. They can keep on interacting with each other. They can keep on interacting with the sponsors as well. So all of a sudden you have a bigger opportunity that goes beyond the single event to market to these people. And you're kind of starting in the same sense of what is happening right now with content and initiatives like Substack, where people are starting their own newsletters and kind of monetizing that, you know, and you see all this trend of owning your audience. I feel that this is what is going to happen within your industry, within our industry, in terms of building your online community that you own, where you own the data, you're selling the sponsorship. There's no Facebook or LinkedIn deciding, like leveraging on your ability to create community and content and then selling the ads for it.
Right. I love that. I love that. And then just, I know we're coming up on, you know, we got about eight or 9 minutes left here. You know, on that note, you're talking about this communities that you're going to roll out here in the future. What else is next for the future? Maybe not necessarily for Swapcard, but let's just look at the event industry in general. Is what's next? Is it really the full rollout of 3D platforms? Is it more data driven? Is it like, what do you see personally? You know, maybe again, not necessarily representing Swapcard, but just for you, your experience in the industry, what's the next step for virtual event platforms?
Totally.
There's
There's one word that it's on the mouth of every event professional that I know right now, and that word is hybrid. That's
hybrid.
what everybody's talking about right now, and it's like really what is going to happen. So gotta look at what is happening right now in the midst of this craziness of the pandemic, and you know, the restart in some countries that are more advanced with vaccination and the incidence of cases going down. I'm far from being an expert on this, but especially like the you know, it seems like if you're based here in the US, I'm based in Vegas, you're close to Austin, you know that 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, it's almost like a switch went off, and kind of like We went from pandemic, still in the pandemic, to cases going down, and it's like, okay, now's the time to reopen, and like everybody's rushing. Like here in Vegas, all of a sudden everything's busy. Casinos are hiring. It's just crazy. Like everything is restarting so fast.
Wow.
So I wasn't expecting it, to be honest, to be that fast. And I'm seeing announcements of events happening every day. We're nowhere near where we should be, but it's going faster than anybody could have anticipated. That poses a lot of interesting questions to what's next. And to me, this hybrid part is so important, because what is going to happen is that a lot of people committed to virtual events for the rest of the year. They just cannot be bothered. They just want to full reopen, and they're just skipping and they're just going to the next year and say, well, I'm going to keep it virtual. Travel situation is still uncertain. You have to think that a lot of big events, business events, they make their money, their profit out of international travel. So they break even with national, they profit with international. So as long as international is not there, these events are not viable. So it's much better for them to stay virtual. But there's a lot of events that are hub in San Francisco, New York. All of a sudden, they're allowed to come back in person. California just announced they're in person. Florida's always been open. They've been running events through the whole year right now. So what is happening is now you have two audiences. People that don't care, they're vaccinated, they just want to attend, they want to restart their life. And people that are still concerned, they haven't been vaccinated, they're still concerned about social interaction, who want to still attend. So how do you merge these two audiences? That's the challenge, right? Do you create an in-person experience that has a virtual experience and attached to it? These two experiences need to come together at some stage. Are two separate experiences? Do you need to plan 2-3 events at this stage? One in person, one virtual, and one hybrid. So these are extremely challenging considerations right now for the industry, because planning an event in person is already a nightmare by itself. If we're asking to add a virtual layer component to it, that has to have the expectations of what we have right now in terms of virtual, which is not what we used to have. Like back in the days, you had the hybrid events. They would just whack a live stream and that was that. Right now, after this collective experience of a year where we have these high expectations of great virtual experiences, like you cannot just do a live stream. You will end up with people upset that they're missing out of the food that people are enjoying in person, drinking wine and getting drunk. Why are you going to do a live stream of that? That's not going to work, right? So to me, the challenges of that, the dynamics of that are really uncertain. We're releasing a report about it in the next couple of weeks. So we actually have a lot of data on how planners are looking at these challenges. It's very exciting.
It's really, really exciting. Okay. So we're not talking VR, we're not talking AR, we're talking hybrid. Hybrid is the future that makes sense. Okay.
VR, AR, honestly, I can tell you about this. This was the time for VR to break through. Like if there was a time for VR to make the mark, it was during the pandemic. Like because like I was a big fan of VR. In March, I was like, this is happening. Finally, we're going to have visors and attend events with visors and interact with people. Like, that was the perfect timing. It didn't happen because people like just prefer to watch something live, right? It's like as VR in sports. How many people watch NFL with VR? I mean, there's some people that do, but is it mainstream? Not yet.
No, it's still super, super early adoption. And it's early. There's still a lot that needs to happen there, but no, it's interesting. Really, really great insight, Julius. I really appreciate it. We have like 2 more minutes here. What are your closing thoughts? What else do you want to leave with the audience regarding just the future of virtual of events, platforms, whatever? Any closing thoughts?
So, you mentioned Hopin. I told you we're experienced 400% growth. They've had like round of funding. So, I've been following event technology as a geek. It's almost like those people that followed Star Wars up until like whatever the 90s, right? Very secluded, but all of a sudden now they're the coolest people around, right? So
Right.
event technology has been like that forever. It's been like, I could count on my hands the people within the events industry that loved event technology. It's counterintuitive. You don't get into events because you like technology. You like people. It's the opposite of it.
Right.
So right now, event tech has seen things that we've never seen before, ever in the history of whenever technology started to get attached to events. The biggest round of funding we've ever seen before the pandemic was $50 million for Double Dutch. And we were like mind blown and shocked by, we're talking 400, 500 million right now. They're the fastest, we have the fastest growing sector in technology in some countries right now is events, virtual events. So to think,
arguably one of the fastest in history, honestly.
in history,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Huge.
So to think that all of this is going to go away once things go back, it's just, to me, is just short-sighted, I would say. So in some capacity, I think a new category started. Where that is going to go, we'll see. But, something new has started right now. So it's probably the most exciting time to be engaged with virtual event tools, because we're at the beginning of it. We're the kind of Twitter in 2008 moment, where things were like so exciting. So we'll see what's next. Nobody really knows.
That's true. In the end, no one really knows. We'll just have to see what the market decides, right? Anyways, Julius, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation. I had a lot of fun, so I really appreciate you coming. And to the audience and everybody else out there, take a look at these reports coming out from Swapcard. Swapcard.com, right, is the website.
Right. Yeah.
Go check it out. Read the reports. Geek out. I know I will. It's because I love that. I love that kind of data. So, and then Julius, let's do this again sometime. I really enjoyed it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to everybody else, thank you. Have a great day. Till next time.